What's up, guys? It's NTR here. Alright, I just wanted to quickly highlight that a lot of you might notice that in the debate we seemed pretty soft on each other, and we weren't really going aggressively. Kind of seemed to seem like we were talking about stuff, and that's because we both agreed that the debate was more so in an attempt to convince each other of our points and of our opinions. You know, so we didn't really feel the need to be too aggressive, although I still want to know who you think won this interaction. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that if anyone thought I was being too soft or I seemed, really nice, or the other way around, like Drip Sauce seemed too nice and letting me off, quote unquote. But yeah, this was just supposed to be a civil debate slash discussion. To just try and convince each other of our different opinions. So still, again, let me know who you guys think won, and yeah, enjoy. All right. I guess you're arguing like he transcends like the constant space and time. So character stats and profiles wiki steering system is fine, right?
No, I'm not arguing Goku transcends. I'm
Like
I'm arguing that
the realm, yeah.
yeah, the realm, yeah.
Yeah, so that tiering system's definition should be fine, right?
Yeah. And we can also use Exility's tiering system.
Yeah, we can talk about that another time.
What's the topic?
If Goku is outer, I'm disagreeing.
Okay, after this, I'm gonna slam you,
Okay,
bitch, faggot boy.
all right.
Um
I'm not
Bro, no
gonna.
no 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 no
Yeah,
no.
I'm never gonna
Do
have to cut
not
that
stop.
out.
He's just gonna hop out of the VC, bro. Do not Electron. Do
Yeah,
not make me
yeah. When you're done, no, I'm not gonna, I'm not, but just tell me when you're done.
All right.
Also, do you have a recording
Exility
button?
quickly. I don't know. I don't think I have a recording bot. I had my
Oh,
staff like fix up most
I'm
of the
recording.
server.
Okay.
All right. W.
All right. So,
Bum, bum, bum.
burden rejoinder just because it's late. I guess like 7 minutes. Standard ballot assumptions. No fallacy limits. Because fallacy limits are dumb. Just explain why the argument's like, dumb. That's fine.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
uh, Normally standard ballot assumptions because we're not debating like characters. So that was weird to say, but you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess just go ahead.
Okay. Let me just get the definition of universal that
Mm-hmm.
I use, just so I can see if you agree with it. Where the fuck is this thing? Ooh. Yeah. I'm okay. Firstly, let me just get the definition real quick. If I don't find it, maybe we can just go with whatever.
Well,
I think they're
auxiliary,
all the same.
the rules that we're using, like we're generally using character stats tiering system, and we might talk about your tiering system definitions late as well. 7 minute bird of rejoinder, no fallacy limit.
Burden of rejoinder, bro.
It says seven
What if
minutes.
something's bad?
Like okay,
Oh,
if you have to leave, like I'm not gonna count that as an L, right? But if you take 7 minutes to find a scan, like it's late. We have things to do. Like I'm
oh
not gonna.
fuck.
I won't be like, oh, Drip Sauce lost because he's dumb or anything. I'll just be like, we had to leave and we can do this later. That's what I mean.
Okay. Okay, so firstly, I'm gonna have to like get you to agree because I like always this always happens. The point that's always the bone of contention is whether or not space can exist without time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, firstly, let me just explain that part, and then if we can get over that, I think it's already over. If we can go through like that point, I think it's already over. Because once I'm able to like convince you that space can exist without time, then it would be that the afterlife doesn't have time. Or maybe I could just go over some other points and debunks and shit, and then it would be over. Let me just find something. Why does it always take so long? Okay, so basically, like, to say that space can exist without time or vice versa is kind of absurd because, like, generally speaking, space is nothing more than a web on which it's possible to exist and move following the physical principles of the web itself. Time, on the other hand, is nothing more than the law of cause and effect itself, which, in order to exist, needs space time. So it turns out to be impossible to have a time without space, since time is actually cause effect, and it needs space to exist. And it turns out to be impossible to have a space without time, since space is a place to exist, and in order to exist, be material or move, you need cause effect. This is proven by the theory of relativity. And the thing is that if there is no time, then it means there was never a space there to begin with. Because time itself is progression. And you can't have progression without the place where the progression itself takes place. That's the thing. It's not possible to have a space without time. They're intertwined. They can't exist without each other. Like it's sometimes I kind of think they're not like separate things, but they're just aspects of the same thing. Where like it's kind of like it's not that easy to explain, but I think it should be easy to understand. But it's really not possible for space to exist without time. I know the other way around. I know in our last debate, I know you agreed that time can't exist without space, but you said space can exist without time, which I don't think is correct at all, because space cannot exist without time. Because if there is no time, it means there was never a space there to begin with. Any fiction that makes like that tries
You
to
said a lot. Can I just interject for a second? So like what?
okay.
I just wanted to like summarize that. What is your main core argument for the vice versa also applying space? It cannot exist without time. Like what is the main thing? Because you said a lot, right? Like there obviously has to be like a main core substance to that argument. Because obviously
Oh, okay.
I agree that time cannot exist without space because all time is just the measurement of causality within a given space, right? It's just like it's just like space itself is just the boundless two-dimensional extent at which I usually go off Wikipedia or even like a normal definition. It's like where like the dimensional extent where objects and events can take place and have relative position, right? Right. All
Yeah.
events take place because of space, but that doesn't necessarily mean that events need to take place for space to exist, right? So like what is the main factor here you're arguing for like space existing without time not being possible?
I'm saying like sorry, space is nothing more than a web on which it's possible to exist, right? And possible to exist and move following the principles of the web itself. That's where it's possible to exist and move. So,
Can you provide the
like,
source for that definition real quick? Because you said it before.
okay, let me check. Um, I mean, it doesn't really need a definition, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory.
I mean, okay, like the main thing I can get from your definition that I like agree with is like the idea that things can take place within a space. It doesn't necessarily imply that it's like things need to take place within that space for it to count as a space. Like, it can just be a space with no
Yeah, but
it
like,
can just be a space with no events taking place within it. There's no like actual like contention with that within your definition if I actually think about it.
yeah, but like
Like
we can't conceive things like space with no time. It's never been recorded like in any study. We can't actually understand what a space with no time would be. Like we can't actually conceive because it's never been observed, so we can't conceive something like that. So to come to a conclusion that a fiction would have a space with no time, like the authors to come to that conclusion, it would have to be looked into carefully, or it would just be like author ignorance or stupidity, because it's literally like not scientifically possible.
I don't think the idea that we've never I don't think the idea like first of all I don't think the idea that like something not being observed or taking place within real life means it can't happen. It means it probably isn't happening within that fiction. Like the whole concept of like an outer space is something that just doesn't occur. We've never observed it within real life, but we know it happens within fiction, right? So that's one thing. And then the second thing is that like there are many things that we don't have any data for existing, but we know are things. Like a fifth dimensional object, we have no data. I'm gonna just gonna mute. Yeah, a fifth dimensional object, we have no data of that actually. Like, well, not to my knowledge. Okay, let's say for example, like an infinite dimensional spatial object, right? We have no data of anything like that actually existing, but we know theoretically. We know like what's the word? I won't say theoretically, but we know like logistically, like logically that something like an object like that does conceptually exist. Like the actual like science behind it does work, right? Nothing actually like we things actually scientifically contradict the idea of time without space, right? By definition of time, but nothing about your definition of space contradicts the idea that time cannot exist within it. Like that's the difference here. Like by definition, time cannot exist without space, but nothing within your definition insinuates that space cannot exist without time. It just means that space makes it possible for time to exist.
Okay, so first you made a point about like the outerversal thing,
Mm-hmm.
where outerversal isn't something we're able to observe, but we know it exists in fiction. There's things that are like logically assertable, and there's things that are not logical. So it's logical to say that like a place, like outerversal as a concept is something that is logical. I mean, it is logical to like imagine a place without like the concepts of space time being non-dimensional. You understand? Because like if there are no dimensions, there is no space time, there's no physicality, etc. And like for this, like I'm not just trying to say, I'm not like singularly saying space can't exist without time. Like I have a lot of things to back that up with the afterlife scale that I have. So like it's not something that I'm saying singularly. Like there's scans that support the fact that there is in fact no space there,
Okay.
and
Well,
there's counter arguments towards you know the um, supposed debunks that people have.
okay. I think then we can just move on to talking about your what's it called? Like we can like move on from this point and just go on to your actual scaling, rather than like this. Because like if you just want to talk about why you think your arguments particularly support this interpretation, then obviously we can just go on to that, right? But because this is obviously like because what we've kind of come to conclude here is that like yes, within fiction anything is possible, and you just believe that it is more likely or it is, and like more likely that there is no space without time. But if you can just substantiate that within your actual argument for out of the world, then we can just move on straight to that. That's fine. Like we just leave. We can like this point doesn't really matter, so we can just move on from this point.
All
If
right.
if you agree to just move on from it, we just leave it like to the air.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So
Oh, give me a
firstly,
sec.
the
Someone's
first
calling
thing.
me.
All right.
Back. Yeah. Okay. So we
All
can
right.
just move on to your actual scaling. So
All
yeah.
right. Let me just get something real quick. Um. Okay. So let me just get the scans because I accidentally sent them somewhere else and I had to delete them. Please just give me like 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2. Sorry, am I lagging?
No, you're fine.
All right.
In fact, this is the least laggy you've ever been in a call for me.
Oh my God, dude, you don't have to embarrass me like this.
No, I have to. Me and my friends, we were like sitting
Um,
in VC together. We were all making fun of you when you were like talking, sending images of like that chick you were talking to. It was so funny.
okay, so basically, the first indication that there is no space is the fact that it's like implied. Like King Kai basically says, his power knows no bounds, and yet his soul is clearer than crystal. I never thought such a being could exist in the corporeal world. He's saying this in context of the fact that he is in the afterlife, which is non corporeal, because it's a spiritual place, which makes sense within context. So, like, when you Google the definition for corporeal, it will, like, even on multiple, like, definitions, it will tell you that corporeal refers to something that is physical or something that has, like, spatial attributes. So, if something is non corporeal, it inherently means that that thing within context is not a physical thing or a physical place. So it can't be like things like spatial like dimensionality and shit, like it can't be applied to it.
Uh, my main issue with that, of course, is the fact that Otherworld, within context, is kind of treated just like another portion of the universe, as a totality. Like even within like let's say like what's a good example? What's a good example? Oh yeah, even like within like the concept of the Battle of Gods fight, for example, right? Like when Goku and Beerus are clashing, um, we see the waves when they're passing through, right? Affects pretty much every, especially in the manga. The manga is like a free even distribution, but like the anime also has it, but it's not of course to the same extent. Like when the waves pass through, it affects every part of the realm the exact same way. So it's like if the waves suddenly change from like this like completely physical to completely like non-physical like entities, right? Just halfway through, like this outer versal entities halfway through, then obviously there's like a bit of an issue. This is not to say the other world isn't spiritual. It is definitely a spiritual place, but it's definitely treated as more of a physical realm within the universe of Dragon Ball than like obviously like you know someone would like think of like maybe heaven or something like that, right?
Yeah. So
It's also
is that
like
all?
another. No, that's not. If you let me to add, like another thing is that, like we talked about this before because I remember you said that like it doesn't necessarily have to be within a timeline, but other world is within the timeline, and like Beerus does call like the timeline space time.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna contend with those 2 points. First of all, in Dragon Ball, like things like physics or logic are kind of like constantly thrown away for the sake of the plot. So you have to understand that these authors or writers don't necessarily understand what Outer Versal is. Akira Toriyama just created a place called the Afterlife, and then this afterlife, with like scaling and proper research, you can determine that it has Outer Versal properties, and it doesn't necessarily have to fit it 100%. It can just have some of it, and then the others can just be like dismissed as author ignorance or plot induced stupidity. For example, in this guide, which I'll explain why it's valid, in this guide it's literally stated that the fertile imagination of Akira Toriyama in this like space, in space it's not literally like referring.
You okay? You stopped. If you're talking, Drip, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Okay, we can hear you now.
But did you hear me say anything at all?
I was hearing you before, but then you cut out. You just suddenly stopped, like dipped.
Where did I stop?
You were explaining. You were saying that you're gonna. You said you're gonna like say explain why the scan is valid, around that part.
Okay, okay. So basically, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, like in Dragon Ball, and in most like cases in fiction, things like logic or physics are mainly suspended to favor the plot. So basically, like these authors don't necessarily understand what outer versal is. They basically just focus on the plot, and then the other things kind of just follow along. For example, if you do a lot of research, you'll realize, hello, can you hear me?
Mhm.
you realize that if you do research like I do, you realize that there's things that imply or just verbatim like give the description of the afterlife being universal, and there are things that do tend to like resemble contradictions. For example, the fact that Goku can literally, okay, let's not even use this. Like, if you're gonna make the argument that, no, I'll get to that later. So physics are generally suspended, like for plot. For example, in this guidebook, which I will explain why it's canon, like I said, why it's valid, even if it isn't canon. It basically says Akira Toriyama, like suspends physics in favor of plot. So it suspends the physics in
Yeah,
favor of
I
plot.
get that.
Things like
I think my major issue with that is that it doesn't really matter as to whether or not what their intention was while writing it, right? Like their intention obviously doesn't matter. What matters more is the effect, and I think we both agree on that, right? I think the effect of making it so that the waves affect the human world in a similar or even like I don't even say similar, like literally the exact same fashion that it affects the other world makes the implication that the other world does have physical properties on a level, on like a similar level. Just it's spiritual in its own way, which Dragon Ball treats it, which is like souls and stuff. Like Dragon Ball, like we know like ki exists within all objects within Dragon Ball because we know like when Goku uses the Spirit Bomb, he gathers energy from literally like plants, literally pots, pans, the sun. He like is literally like Kikai even says like the sun. Obviously, the sun is not alive, right? But and we know ki is separated into like three different components, like in multiple components. We know spiritual components, physical components, and mental components, right? So if
yeah,
ki is like that within Dragon Ball, and Goku can gather ki from like literally every single thing within the universe, including Otherworld, and we obviously know the energy. Like, okay, like, this is like a big thing. I actually didn't bring this up before. Are you okay with me bringing this up, or do you want me to like stop here, like for this point, or do you want to like? Are you okay with me bringing this up?
well, let me just go over a few things.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so basically, first of all, you yourself you did say that ki has spiritual components, and the fact that like the other world is like it is a spiritual place could just mean that the shockwaves don't necessarily have to be physical throughout, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the physical aspects that reach the afterlife. For example, I could literally just say, "Oh, the physical aspects of their ki affected the living world, while the spiritual energy continued and affected the afterlife." Also, the afterlife is not in the timeline. I don't think there's um, any verbatim implication of
Yeah,
that.
no,
If you're
there
talking
is,
about
there
that
is like
one scan,
it's not just one scan.
is
It's
the
like
macrocosm died.
yeah. So we know like okay, you agree that like like we obviously know we see visual depictions in the manga that like each like each universe has its own otherworld, right? Like universe 10 had its own otherworld, universe 7, all that stuff, right? It's verbatim
Yeah.
stated within within the interval guide that each of the 12 universes in their totality is in the timeline. That there's multiple 12 universes. So if the other world is part of a universe and each universe is contained within a timeline, then obviously Otherworld is part of that timeline, which makes sense because we don't have multiple dead Gokus. Like you would see like you would the Goku that died in Trunks' timeline would also be dead in the main timeline if they both had the same Otherworld, which obviously they don't because neither of them were brought up. Like no one, like King Kai would
No.
know that Goku is dead, for example, right? King Kai would have known about the other timeline because obviously he's I don't know in the other world. He would have seen like Gohan, not Gohan. Well, yeah, Gohan. Yeah, he would have seen Gohan, Piccolo, and Goku die, and come to other world and be like, "Why are they dead? Yeah, guys, you're gonna die in the future."
Okay. Firstly, the point you made is kind of iffy because, like, we know in Dragon Ball they treat their timelines as separate multiverses, right?
Yeah,
So if
each
it's
of
a
the 12
separate
universes. Yeah.
multiverse, if it's a separate multiverse, it means it has separate universes themselves within it,
Yeah.
and those separate universes could just have their own afterlives. I mean, there's no reason to believe they can't
No, no.
have their own
I'm saying no.
afterlife.
I'm agreeing with that. The issue, right, is that if the afterlife is within the timeline, right, then obviously it's not. Obviously, it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely that it's an outer versal space, because like if
Yeah, it's not
it's contained within a
okay.
space time.
Yeah, I haven't contended with that point. So, like, when it says, okay, can you send like that guide statement you were talking about? Also, the afterlife, the only thing that relatively implies.
You went quiet again.
Okay, so like send a scan where it says each universe, that thing you said, forgot. Send a scan.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and also the afterlife, like the only thing that relatively gives an implication that it's a part of the timeline is that one scan that shows universe, I think 11 or so, having an afterlife with it, but like that is just the macrocosm diagram. They're not gonna draw a completely different thing when they already have a basis that
I'm
Toriyama
saying
gave
the
them.
implication of doing that is that. Let me just get this. I need to stretch it out, make it bigger. I'm saying the implication of doing that. While under the description it says that whole macrocosm is universe 10. Universe 10 has its own other world within its macrocosm as a description, and right, it is also a universe within the timeline. So if it has its own other world within its universal container description, right, and it's within a timeline, and obviously there's an issue with the idea that other world is outside the timeline because it's within the
Okay,
timeline.
so basically, like the thing about outerversal is that outerversal realms and abstractions necessarily transcend all concepts of space-time. So if there's like consistent evidence to show that it's not within, like it's an outerversal place, then it would be logical to assume that it's not within the timeline, which would coincide with the fact that it's stated to be a representation by Akira Toriyama, just for simplistic, like for simplification purposes only.
Yeah.
So like
So
okay.
that would be fine if it was like it was a consistent thing that it was outer. The only thing that so far like you're trying to argue that implies it's outer is that it's spiritual, and like obviously as I stated before, right?
No,
Like yeah, you might bring
no,
some other
it's
stuff
not. It's
later.
not
You
the
might
only
bring other
thing. It's
stuff
not the
later.
only thing.
You might bring other stuff later,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
as so far, the only thing you really brought up is the fact that okay, it's like it's sort of to be a spiritual realm, and non-corporeal things can be outer, right? Like yeah, like they can be. In fact, like most
Okay,
of the time,
so
outer things are non-corporeal,
basically,
fine. But like I don't think like as I've
I
established, not
wasn't.
everything. Like let me just finish this point. I've established not everything that's non-corporeal has to be outer because they obviously can be in different contexts. And in Dragon Ball's case, it's very unlikely due to multiple things, such as like being
Okay,
described as in within a timeline. Okay, you can go on.
okay. So like, I think you kind of like strawmanned me. Either you know or not, because I wasn't arguing that being non-physical makes it outer. I was just arguing that it doesn't have space-time. I haven't even brought up any of the outerversal arguments.
Okay,
So I
well that's fine. That's fine. I don't like if
think
that's
you
okay,
strawmanned.
then you can just go on to like explaining why. Then like, I didn't know that. I didn't mean to like make you feel like you were
Yeah,
straw man or anything.
yeah. I kind of got thrown off of my own argument for a second. Yeah, yeah. You want to say something? Okay, you can explain while I find my scans.
I'll put a dot here just to indicate when he left. 9:18 for me.
All right.
Okay, he's back.
So basically, like a line of events doesn't necessarily have to be a timeline. It can just be narrative progression,
Well, parallel
which
worlds
exists
are
in
just
physics.
called timelines within, you know, Dragon Ball. So they just outright just call them timelines.
Yeah.
So it's a
First,
doesn't really matter.
the translation for this shit. This one's pretty, pretty verbatim. Can you
You're
hear
cutting
me,
out. You're cutting out a
guys?
bit.
Hello?
Yeah, yeah, okay, you're fine now.
Can, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
Okay, you're cutting out again.
let me just get you a translation. Hello?
Speak a full sentence right now.
Hello?
Speak a full sentence real quick.
My name
Yeah, you're cutting out a lot.
is Drip Sauce. My name is Drip Sauce.
Okay, it's working. It's
The
working.
network over here at college is terrible.
Yeah, that's fine. If you end up leaving because you cut out, I'll just we'll just continue it another day. Let me see.
Okay, so scroll up to like the first scan.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Okay, so basically, like the first scan is from the Dragon Ball super exciting guide. So it's like in context to the fact that Goku in Super Saiyan 3 could like he could like use the transformation properly because time doesn't exist in the afterlife. So I forgot to send the scans. I forgot to send more supporting evidence. Let me just send it straight up. Let me just send it. Scans, scans. Bro, why is my shit lagging this much? Um, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, my scans are lagging, but basically it stated that in the afterlife there is no concept of time. And most people would say, "Oh, it's just talking about the idea of time since they're ghosts." But it's consistently like described as it being the literal time itself, like temporality. I'm sorry. Let me just send these two scans. Yeah, these two scans here. Goku says, "I feel." Oh wait, is it Goku? Basically, just says, "I feel sorry for the Earthlings down in the lower realm. That Super Saiyan 3 thing I did earlier is a technique I can only use in the other world. Here in this world, where you have time, it uses too much energy.
Okay, I think
Where
the
you have
immediate issue with
time."
that, the immediate issue with that is the fact that we know there is a progression of time within Otherworld. We saw that in the Saiyan saga, and we also saw that in the Buu saga time skip. So,
Okay, I have contentions to those, so
hmm
also you can just argue it's a retcon, so but I
I mean,
have
it
contentions to
can't really
those.
be a retcon when it's like it, it's too big of an issue because it literally happened in the exact same arc, right? Buu saga 7 year time skip. Goku literally notes on the fact that it's been 7 years, right? Or at the very least, we know that a progression of time happened that Goku experienced within his training, and also at the same time, a progression of time happened on the other world, right? So, other world, I mean Earth, right? So it's like they're both experiencing two passages of
Yeah,
time, even if one is
but like
much faster than the
but
other,
like
which is, there's no evidence for that, but
yeah, but like that would be implying that the other world and the living world have the same space-time continuum, which as we know, like have the same space-time have the same, what am I saying? Flow of space and time. And it's kind of, you know, just I'm not like posing this as a debunk. I'm just pointing out why that's kind of an if
we
because
know that within Dragon Ball, space times can be. We know in Dragon Ball it's very common for space times to just be contained within bigger space times. For example, Universe 7 obviously has multiple different dimensions within it that have their own space times. For example, the hyperbolic time chamber, blah blah blah, the other world, the universe. Then we have the fact that it's also its own universe, which by definition is a space time. Then we have the fact that there's a timeline, which is another space time, and they're all contained within the timeline. So that's completely fine. They can all be contained within a bigger timeline or space time. Like the main issue is that there is a progression of time. Like Otherworld blatantly has a progression of time within the six. Like we get a 6 month time passage, we get a 7 year time passage. even if it's not
Okay.
like it's blatantly it's blatantly there.
Okay. Um, I'm coming. I have something for that.
Like it blatantly took like the literal like the literal like time. I mean speed equals distance over time thing happens in the other world because we know Goku walked over the Snake Way for 6 months. Then King Kai was like, "Whoa, you got this many times finitely faster. Now you should be able to cross it within like 2 days."
Firstly, the snake way thing is kind of like. Are you arguing that snake way makes Otherworld like have time because it's? Are you arguing snake way is
I'm
like a
saying that
spatial?
when Goku goes in Otherworld, he walks on the Snake Way. He takes 6 months to get there. He trains for 6 months with King Kai, and he takes 2 days once he's done to get back. There's clearly progressions of time happening within the Otherworld,
Yeah, it's not really a progression of time. What King Kai and wait, just give me a minute.
and you
Give me
can't
a minute.
argue it's just these like beings who are just that much above time that what they're colloquializing as their level of time because we know 6 months also passed within the main universe.
Okay, so like um they don't really have all the free time they want on Earth. Because just because Goku is in the afterlife doesn't imply that time on Earth doesn't pass. Okay? So this would be
I'm
important
not
to my
okay,
point.
so I'm not saying time on Earth
Wait, wait,
doesn't.
wait, wait. I'm not saying you're making the claim, all right? I'm just saying it's important to my point. So there isn't really a demonstration that time exists in the afterlife. Rather, what Goku and King Kai are referring to is the fact that they have the personal idea of personal time that doesn't correspond to an actual law of cause and effect as in a universe where time exists. And this is for a simple fact that mathematically speaking, there really is no formula for time in the afterlife. Therefore, the time is indefinite. What passes are not actual days, but an undefined amount of time since it doesn't exist, which, if compared to human terms, can be said to be 2 days, 6 months, whatever the fuck. Since time on Earth, in every case, continues to flow,
Okay,
they're just making use of Earth-like terms to quantify like their actions because like it's consistently been stated that there is no time in the afterlife. Much of I don't think that would be like much to contradict everything that's been said because it's also kind of an appeal to I want to say appeal to reality, but like when they're literally trying to like say, oh, using earthly terms.
okay. The problem is if okay. So I think the issue is if Otherworld straight up does not have time, like conceptually is inept from time, right? Okay, it's like this. Okay, like you understand how time dilation works, right? Like I'm using this as an example. You understand how time dilation works, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I move into space or I move in a certain area, right? I go where if I go into a black hole, right? The amount of time I'll experience within the black hole is like completely different from the amount of time I would experience on Earth, right? And like when I come back, right, even though I've only been in that space for this amount of time, the amount of time that I would have spent on Earth is like millions of years, right? For as an example, within like when in case of like this, right, where there's literally no time progressing, or either one of two things will happen. I'll either go through a bunch of events, right, because obviously I'm just fast enough to move within a space like that, right? Like let's say I have like a measurable speed for a second. I can obviously like move within these kinds of spaces because I'm fast enough to do so, and I can experience events within them. But once I come back, two things will happen. Either no time will pass in the other world, because obviously two like, the time is not moving in the other world, or right, I would be able to just choose which point in time that I want to go to back in the other world. Right. So neither of those two things are happening. Goku and both Goku, right, who has finite speed at this point, right? Because we know like obviously we get like time speed intervals later on, right? So he definitely blatantly has finite speeds at this point, right? Both Goku in the other world and the people on Earth, even King Kai who like lives there, right? And the people on Earth are experiencing a passage of time that is so goddamn similar, right? Like it's 6 months is practically 6 months in the other world as well. one of those two spaces would not have any events occurring within them if one of them blatantly had no time.
Yeah, this falls back to the fact that Dragon Ball just ignores like logic for
Like the
physics
problem with
logic.
that is
It
that
all
like you didn't end up with the like if you want to argue that Dragon Ball doesn't follow logic, like sure, but then you have the fact that like technically then Dragon Ball follows a system by which time occurs even in a place where time shouldn't. Meaning you can't actually colloquialize and say that space doesn't exist there now because time is functioning in that space as well, like by your own argument.
no. Time isn't functioning. That's the thing. All right. What I explained was the fact that it was just the idea of time in their heads
Yeah,
using
okay,
Earth.
and I think you understand my explanation here that even if they have an idea of time in their heads, right? You know, they're obviously even if they have an idea of time in their heads, right? If they are experiencing a progression of events, even to them, a progression of events to them, if it is truly a space with no time, once they go back to the other space, no time would have occurred there. Or in the case of obviously it being a conceptually lacking time, they could just pick and choose whichever point in time near the space they want to go to, because obviously they would just be that fast.
Yeah, I think that's an appeal to reality
That's not.
because like I think like the first thing you said, I think because obviously things like narrative progression exist, and using that logic, no fiction can be out of reversal
Narrative
because
progression
you
can
can't
exist
have an
within
event.
space.
Wait, let me finish.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't have an event passing in an out of reversal realm. So using that logic, no fiction can be out of reversal. You can't. Okay, using that logic, like imagine if a plot needed to happen in an out of reversal realm and then people needed to talk there and speak. Technically, you can't talk without oxygen, and oxygen can't exist without space. But does that make it less out of versal?
No, it just means
It's
that
just
those
the
it just means
author's
that the
like,
beings within that verse are capable of existing there without oxygen or space. Yeah, it's fine.
yeah, but like you can't talk without oxygen. Talking is a physical action. So
Okay,
how do they perform actions that relate to physics when they do not apply to physics?
well, the problem is there,
You see where
right?
the logic
In
falls
that
apart.
instance, in an instance where they're in an out-of-versal realm, then it just means that these characters are capable of performing these kinds of feats. The problem is, in Dragon Ball's case, it's the realm itself that's being contradicted. Like, it'd be different if, okay, you're trying to argue that Goku has, let's say like Otherworld, had was like Otherworld blatantly was like out of versal. Like I had no contention with Otherworld being out of versal. Second, that's a pretend, right? Right? If you then said if someone then came up to me and said, okay, well Goku talks in this place, right? If it's extremely consistent, like within that out like Otherworld is out of versal, right? With none of the contentions I brought, like you know, it's in a timeline, right? You know, time events occur, like time progression is literally happening there, right? Like then it would just be like, okay, well, in this case, Goku just has the ability to talk in there. But in our scenario, right now, it's the realm itself. The statements about the realm itself, they're just blatantly not occurring. Like time is blatantly progressing there because we have a unit of progression that is on par with the unit of progression in the other realm. That is the major issue here. It's not like a character is performing things that are just incredibly impressive in this realm. It is that this realm's functions blatantly aren't the way that characters or statements are defined to be, which means obviously it's likely not being stated in the context that we think it is. For example, right, it would make more sense to interpret it with this information that we have that Goku's just saying that time doesn't have an effect there on the physical body, which we know is the case, right? He doesn't age, right? Or in the case of the world not having no concept of time, the same thing. Time has no like effect on the physical body, which we know is the case because we see people who go to other world don't age. I think that more so fits the context here than what you're arguing because there's a lot of things that simply do not work with it.
Wait,
Whereas
wait, 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 wait. What? Say like the last thing you said. Can you repeat it?
there are several things that outright do not work because
Wait.
of
First
the
of all,
fact that
first of all,
like yeah, I'm so sorry. There are like I'm just gonna elaborate because like you know there are blatantly things that just do no not say do not, that's not the right word, should not work the way they are if it was to be taken literally as it has no concept of time. But obviously, by the interpretation that they are just saying you don't age, it is far more consistent with what we've been described and shown with this realm.
Oh, I get your point now.
Yeah.
So, basically, like, you're saying. Wait, let me just get a scan real quick. Because Goku kept his physical body, but he did not age while he was in the afterlife.
Yeah. Like it's blatantly stated that you don't age in the
Meaning,
afterlife. Chi literally says that.
yeah, but the fact is that he kept his physical body.
Yeah, because they
That's the
let him.
point.
Like we know they let him do that.
Yeah, so it means, like, literally, there isn't any time for him to age.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think you get it. I'm saying the effect of aging does not happen in Otherworld to beings with physical bodies. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if you have a physical body in Otherworld, the effect of aging is negated from you,
And
right?
why is that the case?
That is the main, because that's just how Otherworld functions. It's far more consistent than like
No,
saying
no,
that
no, no,
Otherworld
no, no.
has no literal time.
No, no, no. You can't just like throw in that is how Otherworld functions when there's things that literally explain why it is the
Yeah, and
case.
there are things that just outright just make it that they does that isn't the case. Like we know outright that
No,
Otherworld has time.
yeah, but I did send a scan where it talks about it being referring to the actual temporality
Yeah, Goku says
of
it has.
time.
Yeah, Goku says it has no time. Yeah, sure, that's fine. Like that doesn't. Like
Yeah, and
I
even
think you need to understand it.
it's
Like
even
Goku
stated.
describe. You need to understand that the way Goku is describing it, right, and the way it's shown to function, the most consistent interpretation of Goku's words is that it doesn't obviously make them age. Like I'm not. This isn't to like discredit Goku or anything. I think this is just how Goku just chose to describe it. It's not to say that Goku's like super dumb. He can't like know the exact difference. But like even in this case, right, the way Goku is choosing to describe it, right, and the way it's been shown to work in verse, right, the consistent interpretation is that it doesn't have an effect of the physical body because we know obviously there is time progression there as I've described.
But I already like refuted the point about time progression.
Yeah, and I don't think you and I've like explained why your refutation doesn't work. Like there's more consistency for the interpretation that it just doesn't affect their bodies, but like time literally is there because we see time progression. Like again, like that was the entire point of my time dilation scenario is to give an example, right? In the instance where one realm doesn't have time and one realm does, if I move to the realm that doesn't have time and I do a bunch of things because obviously I have inaccessible speed or immeasurable speed, I'm just that fast, right? If I do a bunch of things there, if I go back to the other realm, no time would have passed in that other realm, or I could just pick in wherever point of time that I want to. Like it literally like, and it's not like if okay, it'd be different if like okay, well, Goku, there is no other way to interpret the term. There is no other way to interpret it, right? Because obviously, people say no concept of something all the time, right? Like you've heard that expression before, right? There's no concept of this, there's no concept of that. Like you have no concept of like mathematics. Like I've heard that. I heard my teachers literally say that to me all the time, right? Because I used to be super bad at math, right? Like that is a consistent expression. So I think it's more consistent here that it's being used in that way because we know time is there. Like in the case of me having no concept of mathematics, I obviously know what maths is. I'm just bad at it.
Yeah, I don't like you didn't really provide proof that time exists there. You just kind of
I did.
threw it
I
out at
explained that
me.
there is a progression of time, and it's one to one with the progression of time in the other universe.
Hey, can you like show that?
You want me to show the actual scan of like 6 months? Like, you,
No, right, no. Can you unmute Exodi? He's trying to say something.
what do you want to say?
You
First
can
of all, why
unmute.
did you mute me in the first place?
Because I can hear the echo of my recording on you.
Yeah, but I was literally muting myself the whole time. So
Okay,
there
well I
was no
didn't know that.
possibility for that. But that's not important. That's not important. All I was asking is if you guys can just repeat the previous point because Gypsos asserted that he refuted your argument and then you said that you explained why Gypsos refutation doesn't work. So at this point I think you guys should repeat that part of the speech
Okay,
so that we can truly understand what happened.
okay,
What is Gypsos' point and what is your point?
okay. So My point essentially was that the fact that other the fact that we know that units of time, right, are described to pass in other world, and the fact that those exact same units of time also progress in the main universe, in shows here that there is a progression of time with the other world. Because as like Drip explained, right, in the case of okay, well, they could just be moving that fast, and that could just be their own idea of how time works. Well, obviously, number one, like I brought up again, Goku obviously isn't that fast, and number two, the progression is exactly one to one with what they say, right? So I gave the example of time dilation. If I'm on Earth and you're in a you're in a black hole, right? Two different parts. Just in this is just simply two different parts of space, not even like two different space times to begin with, but even two different parts of space. If I experience a million years, if I go back to Earth, only about a couple years have passed on Earth, right? So in the case of a space without time and a space with time, if I go to a space without time and I do a bunch of things, because obviously I'm that fast and I have either inaccessible or immeasurable speed, and I come back to the other universe, no time would have passed in the other realm, because obviously obviously there's no time in that other world. So if I come back, right, to the main world that has time, no events would have progressed by the time I come back, because obviously no time has passed. I'm moving and experiencing events at that level. And then Drip, what did you say your refutation was? Or unless I already brought it up, I might have already brought it up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
all right.
Tripsos, what is your response slash refutation to this?
So basically, like, he brought in something about them moving that fast. However, I wasn't really like trying to like equate it to their speed or something like that. Like, I wasn't really trying to relate it to their speed. I just argued there was narrative progression, and then the fact that logic is something that's kind of thrown away when it comes to things that relate to Dragon Ball. It doesn't inherently make the scaling less viable. It just means that there's some things that happen, and then you just have to like find what is more consistent. Which, as like, I haven't even got. He did say
No,
something about.
no. Yes, I have. Jesus. That wasn't to
Dripsos?
Drip. That was to my sister.
Dripsos, are you still there? Bro, you're lagging.
Oh, I said basically. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said like just because something. Okay, wait. Sorry. Add here. Can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. So I said I already addressed this that logic is kind of thrown away when it comes to Dragon Ball, and it's consistent for that to be the case. And I already addressed the fact that there being time there is kind of like consistently pushed away. That notion is consistently pushed away, even in recent things we found, because, like I explained, right? They're just literally like describing they're just literally like trying to go along with the plot. For the plot to occur, certain things have to happen. It doesn't necessarily like contradict the realm itself being out of Versal, but rather there are some author induced like stupidity or some plot or some ignorance of some sort that make it like kind of an if for these things to be the case. But you can still theological assertions show or provide evidence as to why it is the case. And the thing is that I haven't even fully like I haven't finished the scale yet. So like the point about it not having time or not having the concept of time isn't the only thing that makes it out of Versal. There's lots more other stuff. So when you have all this consistency together, it's kind of redundant to say it's not out of Versal just because of a few things that you argue as a contradiction but can be interpreted in multiple other ways that benefit it being out of Versal, especially when there's consistent evidence towards it.
Yeah. Okay. And do you remember what I brought up after that? Or do you want me to go over that again, Exility? Okay. So, in case you didn't,
Oh, no, hold on. What did you say?
so do you remember what I brought up after that?
Huh? What?
Do you remember what I brought up after that?
After what?
After what Drip Sauce just said?
Uh, not really.
Okay, so I then could you mute for a second? I can hear myself in the recording.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks. Um, so I then brought up the fact that um, even with like what Ojiso says, there are multiple ways to interpret what they said, and the contradictions that I brought up more so favor the interpretation that they are just meaning in the sense that obviously time doesn't function at least the exact same way, in the sense that it doesn't affect the physical body, which is what this is the quality that's consistently noted to be the main effect of Otherworld, right? You don't age there, right? So with the fact that we have notions, we have like time, like it's the most literal thing ever. Like time literally, right, is noted to progress there, right? And we know not only is it noted, but we then see that same progression also occurs one to one with how it with the main universe, right? And then so it just makes more sense consistently that it's more consistent with the interpretation that what they mean by no concept of time is similar to my example of when your math teacher says you have no concept of mathematics when you're really bad at mathematics. They're not saying that you literally don't know what mathematics is. They're simply saying that you don't do mathematics well, you're bad at it. In the case of Otherworld, obviously they don't age. That is the main quality that they are noting here. That doesn't occur. That doesn't work within Otherworld. They just simply don't age. And because that is the main quality, the other things now the reason these other contradictions, quote unquote, start making more sense because it's more consistent that way. If the main thing these characters and guidebooks are highlighting is the fact that you don't age. And I
All right.
also I also
So,
I also brought up like the timelines and stuff, which is added consistency to my point.
all right. So, like, y'all can hear me, right?
We can hear you.
Okay. So basically, just throwing it off and saying they don't age as an ability, as a quality of the afterlife, rather than a quality of the fact. No, what would I say? Just saying that like they don't age because of the way you're trying to say it's because of the way it works, right?
Yeah, that's the way the world works. Their
Yeah,
physical
but
bodies
like
don't age there.
I said that's only. Wait, what did I say before? I
I don't
said
know.
that's kind of like not really as supported as what I've said.
I think it is supported because number one, the terminology that they use can be interpreted that way. No concept of something, and the fact that them. Okay, what do you? Okay, I'm gonna before I like go on to this. What do you think is a much more important quality of time? The fact that like units of time are noted to progress at a similar rate to realms that are rated so into halftime, or the fact that you don't age. Like, what is the more important quality of time to you? Do you think? What is the more impactful quality? Because
What?
one literally is just time. The other is like a quality and effect of time. Like
Okay, I want to ask this question. Then why does
I'm asking like
the
you can't answer my question with a question.
oh,
Like you
okay.
can ask your question after. Like
I didn't really catch your question.
so okay,
I didn't really
I'm saying right. What do you
catch your
think is
question.
more important? The actual like time in of itself, like the actual progression of time, or an effect of time, which is aging. Which one do you think is more important to noting whether or not something has time? Because what's described to happen in Otherworld, right? With the whole like 6 months passing, 6 months also passing in the main universe. That just is time. That's not like a quality of time. That literally just is time. Whereas not aging is just a quality that's linked with time, right? It can be linked with time, right? So the fact that Otherworld literally has actual time described in it, and like the only thing noted to be consistent at all, as I've noted, right, with the idea that Otherworld has no time with how it's been shown to work and like function, is the fact that they don't age. It's just more consistent that they're using it in the sense that no concept of time or no time, right? In the sense that they simply don't age. It's in a timeline. Time is only to progress there, right? It's more consistent to argue that they literally just don't age. That's like the main quality.
Yeah, but
You're cutting
like
out a
the
bit.
main problem with your argument is that you're trying to like. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, so the main problem with your argument is that you're trying to say that you're trying to like make it seem like it's verbatim stated that time passes in the afterlife when it's never verbatim stated that time actually passes in the afterlife.
Okay, what do you think 6 months
All
passing
right?
is?
What King Kai and Goku literally says,
Mm-hmm.
I have to scan. I have to scan. No, he says, can you show me this? Because it's talking about when it says
The
6 months
narrator
passed,
says six
like
months
it's
pass. And then
okay.
Goku and King Kai then confirm that when they give units of time of how much time is left to train.
Yeah, it's talking about time passing in the living world and
Yeah.
not the
The
afterlife.
issue is with when Goku and King Kai then confirm that okay, there's only this much time left, right? I confirm that that amount of time has also passed within Otherworld.
Can you specify?
Okay, so the narrative says 6 months has passed, and then King Kai says we have this much time left to train, and King Kai says, oh wait, I didn't factor
Wait,
in
wait. He says what? How much more time is left?
about 100 and something days. Or about you might have just said
The
6 months.
train.
I'm pretty sure you noted how many days were left. I was great.
Wait, is it like the one where Goku is training on King Kai's planet?
Yeah. And then there's also, of course,
Yeah,
I also
it's just describing the efficiency of King Kai's training.
no.
He's just basically just.
Okay, I could just
You're
give you
talking
say.
about. Wait. You're talking about that scan where he says, 100 days with me is like 1,000 years on Earth. Is that the
No,
scan you're
no, that's
talking
not what
about?
I'm talking about.
Oh, what scan are you
I'll get what
talking
I'm
about?
talking about.
Okay, please get the scans. Please get the scans for whatever you say.
All right. Do 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 do. Which do 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 do. Okay, it's still going. And that's me with your mother.
Hold on, you should say that to your grandma.
Did you just call yourself an old lady? That's pretty sad.
Yes, that's probably said the fact that you like an old lady. Or more like you like the mom of an old lady. Yeah, I think it's said there.
So, you're an old lady. That's kind of like the main factor here. Like
And you're a
I'm a fucking
pervert who
I'm
likes
like
moms
I'm
of old ladies, and you're a pervert then. I'd
okay.
prefer to be an old lady more than a young boy that has perversion on moms of old ladies.
That was quite the roast there, buddy. You kind
It
of
was
got me.
quite the
Like,
fact that you're perverted. You're a pervert.
yeah,
I
you
don't
got
want
me, bro.
perverts in
Like,
VC. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just
I don't want a
stumped.
pervert
Like,
in my VC. Get out of there. I
bro,
don't
I'm
want
just absolutely
perverts.
stumped, bro. Like, dang,
Pervert.
I'll never be able
Baka.
to like
Baka. Yeah,
come back from
pervert baka
this.
hentai. Yeah, you hentai baka.
You call me a
Pervert.
hentai? Oh my god, this guy's in another world. Jeez.
Yeah, more like the other word from Dragon Ball.
Oh my, never say that again, bro.
Oh my God.
Says the young boy who likes the moms of old ladies.
Okay. Okay, so here is the where is it? There it is. Here's the one for the narrator noting how much time has passed, and then knowing that Goku is still running, right? Meaning that
Where is this being sent to?
I'm sending it to debate results, man. My bad. I'll send it to scans. So there's Goku. He's running while the narrator says that. I'll get the King Kai scan that I'm talking about. The one you got confused with the other one with.
I don't see it.
Yeah, so I'll get the King Kai scan.
No, I don't see. Okay.
Okay, so
Um.
So Goku had been running. Okay, so important factor here: Goku had been running on the Snake Way, right? He experienced a passage of events while the others were experiencing passage of events. That's important. But then we'll go get the King Kai stuff. So we see that. Where is he?
What? What? Is this what you were talking about?
No,
No,
that's
dude,
not
this
what
does
I'm
not
talking
work.
about. I said the King Kai scan. So I'll get the King Kai scan.
This does not work.
That's not the King Kai
It
scan.
doesn't work. Meanwhile, Goku runs and runs and runs along the Serpent Road. How much longer is this road gonna go? I don't see a King Kai scan.
Yeah, because that's why I said I'm getting it. Okay.
Oh,
Can you hear me? Is like my audio good?
yeah, it's fine. Sorry, I accidentally inhaled a little bit of helium.
I don't know how you do that.
Accidentally.
I forgot the whole. I don't even know what a comedian is. Comic books. Oh my god, forgot about that. Okay, here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Mm.
it is.
I don't see it.
I'm sending it. It's loading. Alright, so yeah. King Kai knows that
Yo, Drip.
158 days, the Saiyans will land on Earth. And then Goku and King Kai know that that's how much time they're gonna train. King Kai says that that'll be more than enough time. Hold on, I cut that part out by accident. Give me a sec. Here it is.
Yeah, but like, bro, like I've said before, this isn't talking about 158 days literally passing on in the afterlife.
Okay. Do you understand? Like, okay, I don't think you've actually been paying attention to anything I've been saying. You understand that if the afterlife has no time, it doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter whether or not Goku is in it. Whether or not 158 days could pass in the mortal realm, right? If there is no time in Otherworld, once Goku reaches Otherworld, no time will pass in the Otherworld when he gets back. Like I've explained this with the time dilation stuff over and over again, right? If there is a passage of time noted to be going on in the main universe, while Goku and King Kai are experiencing right a moderately a finitely, we can even say okay, let's say Goku only, like because Goku says like I've been running for a few days, right? Not running for a few days. He said I don't know how many days I've been running on here. I can actually get that scan if you want, right? He said I should get everything like you say because you don't remember the Saiyan Saga or something like that. So Goku says right, I don't know how many days I've spent running, right? So Goku is experiencing a passage of time, any finite passage of time. We can say maybe he's running for 5 days, right? Let's say that, right? From his perspective, he thinks he's been running for 5 days. It doesn't matter whether or not it's five. Like what he experiences is like any sort of finitely shorter length than what is occurring in the main universe. As long as they are both experiencing a finitely different passage of time, then there is time occurring within Otherworld because they one point, which is the main universe, would not experience any time flowing as Goku and King Kai move at the levels and speed that they would need to be moving at to move in this kind of realm. Or even just exist within the realm in general. It's like again,
Okay,
remember
Ari.
the black hole point? Like if I go to a black hole and I spend a million years from my perspective there, when I get back, because of how that dilation works, only a couple days would have passed on Earth. Their experience of time, right, is a finite portion, right, in comparison to the main universe. Their experience is actually noting a passage of time. Because if they experience, no matter how much time they think they experience, even if it's a million years, when they go back to the main universe, no event would have taken place because there would be no time in Otherworld. They would be moving at a level where there's no time.
Okay, is that all?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, your point is that. Let me just summarize your point. Your point is that if they were in a place with no time, and then they came back to Earth, then no time would have passed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but like I said before, I said this before twice, time on Earth continues to flow. Just because there's no time in place A and there is time in place B doesn't inherently mean that there has to be time in place B because the events
You
are
know that's not
happening
the case of
in
how
this,
time
it
dilation
is
works.
no, let me finish.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, let me just get something. Um, let me get something. Let me get something. Okay. Let's say we have a place A and place B. All right. Um, in place A, all right, time continues to flow, and people in place B are able to see what is happening in place A at the same moment. And then you're using that to assume that place B has time as well. But this is fallacious when happening to a fictional context. And you still cannot apply the same time because even if you want to
Why
argue
is it
it's
why is it
not,
automatically fallacious in a fictional context?
I'm not done.
Yeah, but I'm at, like that's a point. Like that in of itself is like you then said and then right that you are gonna add something else. Like like
Yeah,
it's obvious, like
I'm getting to them.
yeah.
I'm getting there. Okay, fallacious or not logically, like it's just not good enough, basically. So you still cannot apply like the same time because even if you argue the afterlife isn't an abstraction, at the bare minimum it's a separate space-time continuum or a separate realm. So arguing that the time is the same is kind of iffy. Like, how can the opera continue if you're not showing what is happening in a lot of anime or manga? You have demonstrations where events, like, if you're not showing what is happening, all right? Like, in a lot of anime and manga, you have demonstrations where events happen on different pages, different events happen, but they aren't necessarily at the same time. Having two different events happening in the same time is just the author's decisions on how to represent the whole thing. Narrative progressions exist, like I've said before. Goku and the others needed to understand what was happening in the living world while not being there physically. Like I've said before, Toriyama doesn't really understand how a place without the concept of time would work. He just created a place called the afterlife. Once you've analyzed it and the properties, you can access that it has out-of-versal attributes. It's not going to fit the definition 100%, which is what people mostly want, which I think is kind of ratty, because using that logic debunks, like literally every other fiction being outer.
Okay.
A
So
fictional opera doesn't necessarily have to make sense, alright? So it doesn't really debunk anything. It
okay,
doesn't
so
really debunk anything.
the issue with your page argument is that in the case of a page argument, that isn't events within the actual like that isn't what you're describing here is that two things are happening on a page, right? But obviously those things within the page, because of how it's paneled, can be happening at different times. Sure, that the difference between that and this is because we actually have progressions of time being explained to be happening. That's like the major
Yeah, but
difference. Like your example doesn't work,
yeah,
so
but
you have to
like
give a better example that actually fits your example, fits your
yeah,
analogy.
Yeah, but like I already addressed that as that not being actual time existing, but rather the idea of time from Earth.
Yeah, and I'm
I
saying,
already
and I,
addressed that.
and I, okay, so then your example doesn't refute my explanation on why time occurring in one space and why the fact that if they're moving at a level where time isn't occurring in one space, then obviously time can occur within the other. You understand that your example doesn't refute my if your example doesn't refute my argument, then you have to give a better example then, like because my argument is still upheld.
One example. Wait, can you give me a minute?
Sure, 1 minute, 60
What is
seconds.
happening at Dripso's house?
I don't know. I don't think he's in a house. I think he's in a dorm. He said he's in college. Or he might be at his house. I don't know. Bro using seems like he argued off his retcons. It's kind of hard to retcon something that you then reference again multiple times within the series. You know, like
All right.
Goku and the King Kai to train. and then time passes on Earth, and in
Alright,
the other world, while he's creating Kinkai. So
okay,
I don't know what you're
so
talking about, Spanish.
what? Okay, so what?
Do you admit Goku
What was
slaps Comp JoJo? Probably. There's like one. Actually, yeah, definitely. He definitely just slaps Comp JoJo. I haven't read part 7, so I don't know for sure, but from what I've seen, I doubt it.
Yes, yeah, bro, basically, can you repeat the last point you made
I'm
to
saying
counter
your
mine?
I'm saying if you agree that your example doesn't actually like if you like because I already explained why your example obviously doesn't work here because the difference is one is actually explaining there's a passage of time whereas the other is talking about is actually just like depictions within a page of like things happening that can obviously be shown differently because they're in panels, right? And then I stated right that you can if you understand that your example that you use to debunk my argument doesn't work, then obviously you need to establish as in a situation where that's actually like works with the same logic as my situation where the exact opposite is happening, right? That actually contradicts mine because your example doesn't actually refute or address my argument. It's a completely different scenario.
Yeah, yeah, but
So Dripsos, yeah, Antagonist said a correct thing in my opinion. Like you did an example, right? And this example could possibly exist in general, right? Like I personally think that there is a possibility where this type of example could exist and be applied. But he's asking you to give one of these examples because if you're not going to give any example, then you cannot refute his point.
an
So that's
example
what
of
he's
what?
trying
Sorry.
to say to you. So
So
if you don't
okay,
have,
I'll just re-explain it to
yeah.
him. Like um, essentially, right, in my example, right, it's a situation where there are passages of time being noted and shown to occur, right? Within one character's experience in a passage of time, notes that this much time is happening, and another character is experiencing a similar passage of time, and in fact, in my case, a narrator, like we already agreed, a narrator experiences as a notes that the passage of time is happening, right? Whereas in your example, it's just quick pictures on a page. Those don't actually align. Those examples do not align with the ones I've presented. So it doesn't actually address or refute my situation. So it doesn't actually address my point. So he's basically saying that you need to bring an example that actually works with the exact same logic as mine, and like that's blatantly just shown to not be the case. And that what I'm describing, my interpretation just isn't the case in that scenario, and then why that would apply to this one.
Wait, are you talking about the black hole example you gave, or
No, no, no.
the one
So
about?
in the Dragon Ball situation, right? We have two notations of time occurring that are occurring within two different realms. And if those notations of time are not only occurring, but characters are actually experiencing events in both those realms while those notations of times are occurring, then I'm arguing here that it can't they both can't not even one of them can have no time because if one has no time, then obviously when they go through and experience events in that one space that has no time, right? Because obviously they're obviously experiencing events on a level and at a speed at which no time is passing. Once they go back to the other realm, no time would have passed in that other realm because they experience events happening at that pace, right? In your example that you choose like use to refute the Dragon Ball situation as being like a contradiction, or at least more so supporting my interpretation, right? Of it just being like a figurative thing. You brought up the fact that on manga panels, two events can be occurring, but at different times, even though they're shown visually at the same time to us. But in that example, right, like Exility said, it doesn't align because in one case, notations of time are actually noted to occur, whereas in the other, there's no notation of time. It's just pictures on a page, right? So you need to give an example that actually aligns with the scenario that I've actually presented in my interpretation, and why my interpretation then would not work because it's obviously not consistent with what's been presented in your example.
All right, are you still on the point about the time being the same that passed?
And yeah, I'm saying that the time is either the same or there is a finite difference between the two.
Okay, so basically what you're saying, let me try and get this straight because I'm kind of confused. Basically, what you're saying is that 100 days in the living world equals 100 days in the afterlife.
I said
Is that what
it
you're
can
saying?
equal 100 days. It's noted to equal pretty much the same amount of time. But then I noted even if you want to say that at the time that there is some level of dilation, right? It would still be a finite level of dilation, So like I'm more my
Yeah.
my issue here is that time is progressing. That is my main argument here. That
Yeah, but like
time notations are noted to occur.
yeah, but like my main counter argument towards that is that time isn't progressive
Okay.
because it's been consistently shown as a notion that the actual temporality itself does not exist. So it would just be interpreted as the idea of personal time being described using Earth-like terms.
Okay. And I've
Because
noted
I've
right,
said this multiple
and,
times.
as I've refuted multiple times, they can't both be experiencing events occur at the same time, while also noting that similar usages of time are passing. Because if in one case, right, like I explain with the black hole example with time dilation, one would be experiencing time on a level and speed so great that when they come back to the other realm, no time would have passed. Like in a black hole example, if I experience a million years in a black hole, when I come back to Earth, only a couple hours or days could have passed, right? But you're doing it in the case where there is like time is so dilated that there's no time. So if I go back to the other realm, no time would have passed.
Wait. I never said time was dilated
No,
to the point that there was no
I'm
time.
saying dilated as like a way to make it like sound like make more sense, right? Like time, like because obviously I'm talking about time dilation
It's
with my black hole example, right? The
yeah,
time is
but
then
it can't make
dilated to the point where
sense.
one has no time and one has time. Right? I'm saying like the difference between the two, right? Like in your argument, the difference between the two is that one has no time, and one has time, right? The difference would then imply that when I go back from that other world that has no time and I come back to the main universe, no events would have passed. That's the implication of that argument.
Yeah, but like as I said before, like narrative progression does
Okay,
exist.
okay, this is okay. This is the thing with narrative progression. Narrative progression is just things happening within the narrative, right? You can have a characters moving at like a measurable speed, but things are still happening, right? That's fine, right? The difference here is that notations of actual time are occurring, and we can actually scale them that they are occurring. Like it's different between okay, well these characters are a relevant speed, but we see them actually physically moving. Like obviously, if a character is beyond speed, then they shouldn't need to move, right? Well, obviously, but like in that scenario, right, the narrative progression is that they are moving, yes, and they are doing things, but obviously events need to occur between these two characters. These two characters are on a level. Actually, no, I explained that badly. If two characters, like, let me just start from here. If two characters who have a relevant speed
Yeah,
are
you did.
yeah,
You
if two,
did.
yeah,
You did. You
I was like, I was like halfway through, I was like, I'm explaining this so badly. Okay, so if two characters who have
Oh my
irrelevant
god.
speed, okay, I'll start with this. If two characters have irrelevant speed and they're fighting, right? Okay, like start with that, right? Two characters have irrelevant speed and they're fighting. You understand that? Okay, so
Yeah.
they're fighting, they have irrelevant speed. Obviously, the event of them fighting at irrelevant speed is occurring, right? We agree, right? Like
Yeah.
events on that level, right? It's beyond the concept of event, but because it's a narrative, because it's a story, it can be presented. Obviously, events at that level is occurring. That does not mean that 10 seconds have passed between that fight, right? Obviously, no, it's not the case because they're moving at a relevant speed, right? But
Yeah.
narrative progression has happened. The difference here with the Goku example is that I'm noting here that we can actually scale passages of time happening, right? With the narrative progression, there's also the narrative that there is time passing, right? Whereas in the other example, there is narrative progression, but no time is passing. Like it's two different things, right? You understand that? And Exili, do you understand
Yeah.
what I'm arguing here? In case you want further elaboration, because I know the first time I explained it, it was really badly, so it might have like confused you as well.
Yo, I think whenever Exility explains your point to me, I understand it better. Because I really
Yeah,
don't like most of the time when you explain stuff I don't really understand.
like I'll be
So
talking
let me
like I remember last time Exili tried to judge our debate, and like literally his like he I like asked him to like do you remember when this was said in the debate? He'd be like, no, and do you understand the implications of this? And he's like, not really. I'm like, bro, what?
yeah. So like Exility, did you understand his point? Like I understood a part of it, but like the whole thing is it's kind of rushing into me, you know.
Okay, so two irrelevant speed beings, right? When they move so fast that they're essentially beyond the concept of time,
Yeah.
right?
I understand that part. That you said narrative progression, like the event of them fighting is happening, but it doesn't mean time is passing.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly the point. And the difference here in the Dragon Ball example is that I can actually scale out notate like events of occurrences of time.
Oh, I see. So, like, are you saying that, like, wait a minute? But wouldn't that be contradictory to the fact that it stated that temporality itself doesn't exist?
Okay, so the when he says, okay, what is the temporality scan when Goku says there's no time, or
It says
they can never go back to the
it says
temporal world again.
yeah, as it's talking in context to the world where they are being non-temporal.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously the major issue with that is that of course majority of the descriptions, right, of the realm is that okay, no time, no concept of time, right? I understand that, right? When Goku then says, or I don't know, was it Goku or King Kai? I don't know. Either way, right? Because like obviously like we know we're obviously arguing what the consistent interpretation of what they mean is here, right?
I know what you wanna like. I know
Yeah.
what you wanna
So
say. I
so
already know.
essentially, right, what I'm saying here is that not only have I explained, because obviously like if you're bringing up the fact that it says no temporal world, you're obviously implying that like what I'm saying does make sense to an extent, but this particular scan might debunk it, right? Is that what you're trying to argue here? Because
Oh,
like
no.
okay, yeah, we
I'm
can't,
not saying.
because
I'm
like
saying like
if you still
the
think
example you give.
if you still think that like what I'm saying is wrong, you're wrong by what you've already presented besides the temporal world stuff, then we can still talk about that. But like for us to move on to focus on this one scan, we have to like come to a consensus on like the implications of what we said based on what we've already presented, right? Like if you still don't think what I said is makes any sort of sense, excluding the temporal scan and focusing mainly on the no time and no concept of time and like the actual events of Otherworld, right? We need to get through those first before you can say, okay, well then the temporal scan, then how do you want to talk about that, right? Like you need to focus on one thing at a time because we've gone through a lot, right? And it's starting to get late.
Okay, the reason why it's really not possible to focus on just one thing at a time is because all of them together. All right. So when I say that, like I've said before, right? I've said this before how many times? Like it's basically just them talking about Earth, like how much time would have passed on Earth, and using that to like quantify the action so the reader can understand. Because basically, what Goku is doing is that he knows, like what Goku literally is like being used to speak. Like we know these characters have
Okay,
a dialogue,
I get
right?
what you're trying. I get what you're trying to say. I think I have a statement that can address that.
Wait.
No, no,
Wait, let me
I get what you're trying to
finish.
say before now. Like you mentioned something like that before. So what I'll say now is that by what I have explained, the most consistent interpretation of what these characters mean when they say there's no time, no concept of time, or quote unquote calling that other realm the temporal world, is noting that these in the main universe they are affected by the effects of aging, whereas in the other world, right, aging is not a factor there, because consistently, like I've noted and I explained, consistently like I've noted and as I explained, right, we can notate progressions of time between the two, like we can actually scale it out and notate it, right? So obviously, literally there being no time doesn't work because, and I don't want to get too I don't want to get too annoying, but like even what you said about them, okay, they just don't understand what they mean by no concept of time. The problem is literally what you've described is time. Literally what is occurring there verbatim is time. Aging at the very least is a quality that happens, you know, due to time. That's not time itself, but that's something that occurs because of time, right? But what we're describing in other world, what I'm noting here and scaling through here is time. That's like the major issue.
Okay. Okay, so like the first thing you said, kind of, because you're trying to equate time itself to aging,
No, no, I'm saying that the
like in
quality.
a
I'm saying that
sense.
aging itself, right, is something it's essentially simply something that occurs as an effect of time, right? So if we can like if the story chooses to say that okay, this realm doesn't have this one particular effect, right? It can still consistently work. The realm has the major quality, right? But that one little minute effect, right, can be taken away. That's fine. It's different when you take out the core quality, the core like, concept itself, and try to say, okay, well, we're removing the core concept, and then like we're saying that like All those things, all those qualities are there, right? That's a bit different. In this case, the core concept is still there. Time itself, the core concept as a the core concept of the thing, the core object is still happening, and you're trying to say it's not, right? That's the big issue I have with your argument, right? Time itself is still time by definition is still happening within Otherworld. Whereas, right, in my interpretation, I'm just taking in my interpretation. I'm just saying it's more consistent. These characters are doing this one singular quality that you can attribute. You can actually attribute to time, right? This one singular quality is taken out, and it's more consistent that way because if the core concept of time still exists, it's more consistent because at the very least, you can't actually have the concept of time happen and the concept of time not happening, right? Like it's two things that are clashing with each other.
Okay, so like basically you said that the statement about it not having a concept of time is in reference what is in reference to the fact of what I
Is in
can
reference
you
to the
repeat that
I'm
part
saying that
because
when these characters say that there is no time and no concept of time, right? What they essentially mean is that they won't age there. I think that is what they're noting. Which I think if you remember the math example that I brought up, when your teacher says you have no concept of math, right?
all right. So that's the all right for a reason. That reason being, first of all, why is the character saying there is no concept of time? First of all, it doesn't really it, it doesn't necessarily have to be the fact that he doesn't age, because we know these characters have a dialogue, and with this dialogue, the author speaks his intention for the character. So if the author's intention is that the realm doesn't have time, and he's consistently stated it, even stating that without the concept of time in the data book, even addressing it as not just the idea but the actual like temporality itself not existing, and then it's consistently like shown to be to be the case within this context, but it doesn't really apply that way. So basically, like, it doesn't have to be attributed to age, because it's not really. Wait, what am I saying? I think I confused myself.
Okay, so
um
I'll just focus on the parts that did make
this
sense so far. For it to mean that no time was literally there, I just disagree with that. I can literally just say that like you can never actually know for 100% what he intended, because quite literally like we've described, we know for a fact that verbatim like verbatim, right? Like characters can say things and explain things that later, like either later turn out to be wrong or are just wrong at that point in time in the narrative. Like Toriyama's done that for example, like he made Vegeta think, he made Vegeta say, oh, they destroyed what's it called? Not they. Goku destroyed the moon. Goku didn't destroy the moon. It was Piccolo, right? So we obviously have instances when
sorry, what?
there was no. Do you remember in the Saiyan saga, Vegeta thought it was Goku who destroyed the moon, but it was actually Piccolo.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah,
instances
yeah.
where Toriyama will actually make a character outright lie or be wrong, right? In this case, he can simply just be making the characters be talking colloquially, right? Saying that okay, colloquially, but maybe what it means is a colloquial definition of saying there's no time or no concept of time, right? Like I explained before, my math teacher can say you have no concept of mathematics, you know, and or you have no sense of mathematics. And I have teachers who say things like that consistently all the time to me, right? When I was like terrible at math, right? Until I got good, you know.
Yeah.
Guys,
So so
listen, guys. I think this is generally speaking is completely circular because, in my opinion, Gypsos is not really addressing NTR antagonist point and vice versa. You guys are just basically repeating yourself over and over. I think that the main point, without getting out of the topic, is that Gypsos is asserting that in the afterlife there is no time, and you have several data books and blah 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 that state that there is no time. That is also why Dragon Ball characters don't age once in the afterlife and blah blah blah. And the NTR antagonist is saying, like, he's trying to refute Gypso's point, and he's saying that the difference between the previous example, like, when Gypso say that if you use NTR antagonist logic, you can debunk all of fictional operas where there are autoversal realms. Do you guys remember that part? NTR antagonists say that those cases are different because the example from Gypsos cannot be applied to his own situation. And again, you guys are stuck on this point, and you don't really you aren't addressing anything, both of you. This
Okay.
is circular.
Well, it's getting late
So
anyway.
since I want to understand in a better way, in a better manner, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me, Antagonist, right?
Mhm.
Did you say that you can still, quote unquote, quantify the amount of time of action that flows, the amount of time that flows between the actions and events happening in the afterlife
Yeah,
or
exactly,
something
exactly.
similar?
I'm saying that we
All
can
right,
actually
and
scale through these events, unlike in Jigsaws example where you can't, right?
all right, and Gypsos is saying basically the opposite. So other than adding points, because if I have to be honest, I think you guys are just adding points on other points and so on, and you are not resolving the real problem, the real issue. So you should focus on this.
Okay. Well, it's almost
That's what I
10:30
personally
for me
think, because
anyway.
it's
Hmm.
taking too long, and also I have to debate another person, an Italian like me, in
Yeah,
a
that's
few
fine. I think
hours.
I think
Yeah, so I
honestly,
think you guys should move up.
yeah, I think drip sauce. Besides these stuff, I think isn't all the stuff you would bring up would be like the Koyama stuff anyway.
What?
Besides all this stuff we just talked about, wouldn't your main argument be the Koyama stuff or like the game guide anyway?
No, it's not the Koyama stuff. Like, I'm not done.
Like, yeah, no, I know, but like then okay, like what is your like other like set of arguments? I'm just asking because like I'm gonna do what
Oh,
I'm gonna do regardless. I'm just like saying this for like the sake of like or what I'm about to say.
okay. So I asked, Electron basically like asked a Japanese student to translate the Daisenshu scan contextually, and he said
The other
it's
ones, okay,
referring to a
wait, whoa,
higher.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, so we can. I just wanted to ask, right? So this main stuff is done. So and I won't say done because obviously we didn't come to a conclusion. But I think because it's almost 10:30 for me. So what I'm gonna do here is that I'm going to like obviously edit out like the people slurring at the beginning, and my sister screaming. But besides that, I will send you the recording as well, so you can confirm that everything's there. Like in case you think I'm gonna like edit out your arguments or whatever, right? Because I don't like people who do that. So I will get this part of like what we discussed done because I actually think this is like a pretty important main portion, and think this is the portion that most people who talk to me are gonna care about anyway. So I'll get this like like posted out. I'll put it like a part one discussing with drip sauce whatever, and then we can talk about like the other stuff later because it's almost 10:30 and I'm getting tired bored of this anyway, right? Because I think we've
Yeah,
addressed
can